Hello. Thank you for joining us today for this installment of Experts on Demand. My name is Mark Profeta. I'm a clinical education specialist with Ottobock, and I'll be your host during this hour-long webinar. Your presenter today is going to be Ron Wilkinson. Today, we'll be discussing the Nexgear Tango ankle. Before we start, though, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items so you know how to engage with today's event. First, if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A feature. If we have time, there will also be a structured Q&A at the end of the webinar. Next, to receive any ABC credits, a link and a QR code will be available to take a quiz at the end of this presentation. Finally, this session is being recorded and will be available next week on Ottobock's My Learning platform. Our topic today is the new Nexgear Tango ankle. The Nexgear Tango ankle is a multifunction ankle joint that provides the user a greater degree of functionality and a more natural gait. The first generation joint has undergone a complete redesign after listening to the feedback from orthotists like yourselves. This webinar will provide an overview of the features and functions of the Nexgear Tango ankle. We are fortunate to have Ron Wilkinson with us as a presenter. Ron began his career in O&P back in 1994 as an orthotic technician before attending Northwestern University for his orthotics and prosthetics education. With over 20 years of clinical experience, he is now a senior clinical specialist at Ottobock with a specialty in orthotics. And without further ado, I'll pass it over to Ron.
All right. Thank you, Mark. And thank you all for joining us today. I hope you, for those of you who have a little bit of experience with Nexgear Tango, I think you'll like what you see in terms of the improvements that have been made, the different modifications that have been made. And for those who have no experience with Nexgear Tango, then I think you'll see that this is a unique ankle joint, and it does a very good job of meeting the needs of patients out there that we really haven't been able to meet those needs previously. I start all my presentations with our mission statement. So our mission statement is we help people maintain or regain their freedom of movement. That is Ottobock's mission statement, but I really think it speaks to all of O&P, maybe even all of physical medicine. I mean, people are coming to see us because they can't move as well as they would like to, whether it's due to an injury they've had or disease process, something like that. So I think we have that shared goal of helping people get back up and going again. And this particular product, Nexgear Tango, I think you'll see does that very well. Some of the things that we'll be talking about here, certainly we'll introduce the Nexgear Tango ankle to you. We'll talk about patient selection. Who's the best patient for this particular type of ankle joint? And what are the benefits that that patient would experience with Nexgear Tango? And then we'll talk about some of the technical overview kind of stuff, just some general things about the joint itself. We will touch on fabrication and fitting a little bit, and then certainly give you some resources to be able to use. So we'll jump right into the Nexgear Tango. So Nexgear Tango ankle, it does fit into this category of multifunction ankle joint. And as you'll see as we go through this, I think you'll be able to very clearly see how different this joint is from your typical double action ankle joint. We can kind of describe it, or three words we can use to describe it maybe would be dynamic, modular, and powerful. We'll kind of step through those different descriptions. Dynamic, certainly because we're allowing this patient now who needs support in certain areas to still experience more normal type of ambulation. We're not having to necessarily stop a motion altogether. We can allow them to still experience some degree of dorsiflexion through stance phase and not have to prevent dorsiflexion altogether in order to provide some sort of knee stability. This joint, if there's no pretension on the springs, it actually has 20 degrees of range of motion available there. But of course, someone who has weak lower extremities, we don't really need them to have that motion so freely. So with the springs that are available in this Nexgear Tango, we can still allow someone to go through the normal range of motion that they would when ambulating, but it'll be under control now. They will feel very supported. One of the things also that allows us to provide a closer to physiological gait is the fact that we can adjust alignment independent from the forces that we're applying there. So no longer do we have to, completely block something in one direction to allow it to happen in the other. So that's one of the things that kind of differentiates a multifunction ankle joint from a double action ankle joint, is this ability to have independent adjustability of alignment from these forces that we're using. When we're talking about modularity, the fact that the joint is modular in terms of just being able to replace it very easily, that's one thing, but just the different aspects of the joint that are modular. There are 4 different functional modules that can be used, and any one of those 4 can be placed in either the anterior or posterior channels of that ankle joint. Ottobock as a company has kind of been known for its, development of modular componentry and prosthetics, certainly. I know the founder's son-in-law actually had the patent on the pyramid adapter back in 1969. So we've kind of been at the forefront of modularity for quite a while. But with this particular joint, again, not only being able to exchange it very easily, but change between the different modes to provide whatever your particular patient needs. We can find something there that will meet that need. And each one of these modules now is also adjustable. So it's not like we're putting something on and that pretty much it is what it is. I mean, once you have that module in one of the chambers, then you can adjust that to that particular patient's needs. And when we're talking about powerful now, I think this is one of the areas where it really, you'll really see a difference between Nexgear Tango and anything else out there. The amount of energy return that we can provide someone if they have those weak lower extremities. The spring on the newest version now with the Ultra module, it can produce up to 80 Newton meters of force. And I know personally that really doesn't mean a whole lot to me. What's 80 Newton meters of force? But I know 80 Newton meters, it converts to 59 foot-pounds. So if you can imagine a lever arm that's 1 foot long, and you're holding at one end, and at the other end, you hang a weight that's 59 pounds. That's the amount of force that we're able to create here with this Ultra module. And because of that, we can allow someone to feel very stable during the stance phase of gait without having to lock up that ankle. Now that spring is so powerful that as they roll over that foot, as they load that toe, they're loading that spring. So we get that energy storing and then energy return. So it allows for a much more dynamic toe off. So again, we're allowing them to experience much closer to physiological gait now. Let their ankle going through a more normal range of motion through gait. So they're not having this start and stop kind of feel where it's actually blocking motion and then allowing motion all of a sudden. So in that regard, I think people will find it much more comfortable walking with an orthosis like this using this type of ankle joint than certainly with a traditional, conventional double action ankle joint. In terms of patient selection, the person you're probably looking for this ankle joint here is someone who has severe lower extremity weakness, and maybe even more specific, I would say plantar flexor weakness. If they've got dorsiflexor weakness alone, this might be kind of overkill for them. It would certainly help them, but where it really shines, I would say, is that person with plantar flexor weakness. Even someone with mild quadriceps weakness I could see benefiting from this ankle joint as well. If they're not quite ready to cross that knee and go to a full KFO yet, if they're dead set on staying on an AFO, this orthosis allows them to still feel the degree of safety, security, support, that anterior support that's going to help to encourage knee extension. They'll feel that with this joint. Some of the diagnoses that we've seen successfully fit would be someone with, say, an incomplete spinal cord injury or traumatic brain injury or stroke. Those are the type of patients that we're seeing that benefit from this type of ankle joint, certainly. And especially, I would say, if they're one of your more active patients, if they like to do a lot of hiking, if they're walking a lot on uneven ground, ramps and slopes and doing stairs, things like that, they're going to really notice the difference using this ankle joint versus certainly a traditional double action ankle joint. One of the things too, I would say, one of the things that makes it a little easier for you as the orthotist is the fact that it is alignable. So you're getting that same type of feel of a full carbon fiber AFO, but you have the alignability of a traditional double action ankle joint. So it sort of gives you the best of both worlds there. In terms of contraindications, it's probably not the best thing for someone with severe lower extremity spasticity. We know that spasticity sometimes can be triggered with something that it has kind of a springy feel to it. And we certainly don't want to trigger that spasticity. So this might not be the best option for them. Similarly, I guess with a fused ankle, in terms of contraindication, this ankle joint allows someone to experience that normal range of motion as they're ambulating under control. So if they lack that range of motion to start with, there's really going to be no benefit to using an ankle joint like this, because they won't be able to experience that range of motion because they just don't have it. So it really wouldn't be of any benefit for that person who has a fused or severely limited range of motion in their ankle. And then that low mobility patient, if it's someone who just outright doesn't walk a whole lot, or certainly if they're never really having to encounter uneven ground or slopes or stairs very much, they may not really see much benefit from this particular ankle joint. But if they are someone who does encounter those types of situations, they would very much see and feel the benefits. In terms of those benefits now, there was actually a study that was done, published earlier this year, and it showed a significant difference between Nexgear Tango and conventional orthoses. It showed, increases in range of motion, reduced compensations, because again, we're allowing more natural physiological gait to happen. We're not limiting them in certain ways, so they're not having to compensate for those things. So ambulation is much more natural, much more energy efficient, things like that. And then also certainly because of the strength of the springs that we're using in Nexgear Tango, there's a much higher peak output of power. What they feel as they roll over that toe, loading that spring and then returning it at toe off, is a feeling they just would not experience in a traditional conventional double action ankle joint. But they very much will feel that. I know I've had people who are in a traditional type of posterior strut carbon device and had we had like a demo trial tool that we had made here in the US. And I had them walk on that, one leg in their current orthosis and one foot in the one that has the Nexgear Tango with it. And they said they felt a similar type of feel. So your patient will get that same type of energy storing, energy returning kind of feel when using Nexgear Tango that they really want if we're trying to fit them in a traditional type of orthosis. This is something just kind of to give you a general idea of what we're talking about in terms of how the patient might have to compensate if they're in another type of orthosis. This gentleman here obviously has weak plantar flexors. We have him on a 10-degree downslope. So you can see what he would look like with no orthosis on, with a solid ankle ground reaction AFO on, and then with Nexgear Tango. Because that ground reaction AFO has a solid ankle, it's got his foot and ankle locked in a certain position. So for him to find his balance point, he has to kind of flex his knees and flex his hips. You can kind of see how his arms are out in front of him a little bit more, trying to find that balance point. But then look at him standing there in Nexgear Tango. Because we have that really powerful spring in the posterior channel, it's allowing his foot to plantar flex in a controlled way and allows his knee to be a little more extended and his hips to be a little more extended. And he's in a much more comfortable position on that slope. Here he is, same person, same types of orthoses worn with no orthosis. Because we have him dorsiflex now on a 10-degree slope, he looks a little more in a natural position there, but still probably, I'd say, excessive knee flexion. But look at that with a solid ankle ground reaction AFO. Again, because that does not allow the ankle to move at all, it's producing that knee extension that it's meant to produce. Well, that has him back so far, he has to lean forward now to be balanced. And that wouldn't be a very comfortable position to stay in for an extended period of time if you have to, stand on a slope at some point. But with Nexgear Tango, because of the springs and how powerful they are, he can still get some dorsiflexion on that slope, and his knee is in nice alignment. His whole body is in just a much better position on that slope. So it kind of gives you an idea how Nexgear Tango will react to slopes versus other orthoses, and certainly with no orthosis at all. So this video here demonstrates someone ambulating without their orthosis and then with Nexgear Tango. And he has the Ultra module in that anterior chamber. We'll talk about the different modules here in just a second, but the Ultra module is something new to this new version. It's a more powerful spring, so it allows them to be able to, for many people, I think they'll be able to get by with just a single ankle joint, whereas before, even with our reaction modules, the strength of those springs required two ankle joints to provide enough resistance, enough support, so that they felt balanced and supported when ambulating. You can see, coming down that slope there, everything he's doing is just under so much control and looks so much like natural physiological gait. As far as a technical overview, just kind of giving you a general idea about the joint itself. I do realize that that's more words than you would ever want to see on a single slide, and I'm not going to go through point by point, I promise. But what I want to point out is how much has changed from Generation 1 Nexgear Tango ankle to Generation 2. Practically everything has changed about it except the look of it on the outside. So from the addition to the Ultra module, there's different types of stirrups now. They're serviceable in the field. They added some little bumpers to make them a little more quiet. There's really everything about this has been redesigned from the feedback that we got from the field. So I think you'll really like, those of you who've had some experience with it, I think you'll really like this updated version. If you liked the first version, you're going to love this second version, especially that Ultra module, I promise you. When we're talking about the 4 different modules now, we have a stop module, spring module, reaction module, and Ultra module. So if you're using the stop or spring modules, they're going to act very similar to a spring or a pin in a typical, traditional double action ankle joint. So I would probably say if that's all you were going to use it for, and you knew that you were never going to use it for anything other than the stop and the spring module, one of our other, the unilateral ankle joint is a great ankle joint to use for that type of application. But what we have seen is someone, maybe they come right out of surgery or something, and we want to limit their ankle altogether. So we might want to actually have 2 stop modules in there that limit all motion. And then they can graduate, and we can change out those modules to gradually allow more motion to happen as they need it. But when we're looking at stop module and spring module, just think about pin and spring in a typical conventional double action ankle joint. What really makes this act differently, and what you would see, a difference with your patient, is this reaction module and Ultra module. The reaction module has been around since the beginning of Nexgear Tango. That Ultra module is new to this new version of it. And this Ultra module is twice as powerful as our strongest spring in the reaction module. I'll tell you a little story. We had developed like a demo or a trial tool here in the US, and we had made it with 2 ankle joints, bilateral ankle joints, and I'd put reaction modules in the anterior chambers and put the strongest spring that we had, our extra firm spring, in both those chambers. I'm 6 foot tall, about 180 pounds. I could lean into that anterior support and I could feel where I could get to the end of those springs. I could feel it kind of bottom out. Um, it supplied a lot of resistance there, but I could definitely feel that even me at 6 foot 180, I could feel like I was maybe even overpowering those strongest springs we had. Now we have a trial brace that could be purchased. You could have one in your office if you'd like, but it's made with only a unilateral ankle joint, just one ankle joint. And I had that on, and I put our Ultra module in that anterior chamber, and just with one ankle joint, I could not feel the end point of that spring. So we say it's double the power of the old extra firm, but my experience has been with me actually putting it on, it felt like it was even more than double the power because it felt stronger than two of those previous extra firm springs. So you get a lot more energy return with this Ultra module. But because it is twice as strong, there are those that you might be able to get by with one ankle joint, whereas before you had to use two ankle joints to get the amount of force and the amount of support that you needed for that patient. So that's kind of I would say, an added benefit for the Ultra module, that we can do that kind of thing now. These are the weight limits for the different joints. So we have 3 different size joints: a size 14, 16, and 20. And each of those joints can be in either stainless steel or titanium. The weight limits you can see for the smallest joint, you could use that in a unilateral configuration for someone up to 110 pounds. And then our largest joint, the size 20, in a bilateral configuration for someone up to 352.5 pounds. So that's a pretty broad range there that we can use this joint for. And really, anywhere in between, you would just kind of see the weight of your patient and their activity level, and you can just kind of use this chart to see if you need to go or could go unilateral or if you want to go bilateral with them. Now this kind of gives you an overview of the different sizes and their dimensions, the weight of the joint unit itself, the height, the width, the depth. I will say, and I want to point out that Ultra module is only available in the size 16 and 20. So the weight that you see at the bottom, that bottom column there, or bottom row, that's the weight of the joint unit with an Ultra module and a reaction module attached to it. So that kind of breaks down what you're looking at as far as how much weight. I think the joint unit itself, in terms of dimensions, is actually a little bit smaller than our unilateral ankle joint. But once you start adding the modules, that's when we get a little increased height and the joint itself, gets a little bigger. I mentioned the test brace a little earlier, so we do have a test brace that's available. It can be sold just individually as a one-off. They're going to come in either the size 14 or the size 20. If you got a set, there is a test brace set. With that set, it would come with both the 14 and a 20 in a right and a left with 3 different foot plate sizes. So the size 14 has its own foot plate, but then the size 20 would have 2 different foot plates that you could interchange, and they're based on the patient's foot length and their weight. But that would be if you got the entire kit. The overall weight limit for this test brace is 220 pounds. But it would give you a good idea of, is this the right option for my patient? You could put this on them, and you can put the modules that you need in the different chambers and have them actually ambulate. It'll fit inside their shoe, and then just have them ambulate in it and see if this is going to give them the support they need. We can hopefully allow people with this joint to experience, allow them to get, that natural range of motion that happens during ambulation. And we no longer have to, block dorsiflexion altogether to give them the support that they're needing. There's also a fit kit. So I would recommend, if you order that test brace kit, then you would order the fit kit with it. The fit kit gives you every size of module, every spring, all the tools that you will need to assemble it. So it all comes together in one nice package. And I know what some will do is, those that have that fit kit, when they're fitting their patient, they'll be able to pick and choose and try different modules and see what works best. And then when they get down to what they're actually going to go with and what they're going to finish the brace with and let the patient take home with them, that's when they can then just order those individual parts to replace their fit kit. So you're not kind of guessing on what you need and having to send stuff back and reorder and things like that. You've got everything you need right there in front of you to do your fitting. And then again, once you decide on what you're going to go with, then it's just a matter of ordering a couple of things to restock your fit kit. So when the next patient comes in, you again have everything you need to do a full fitting for them. One of the other things I'll point out that are different about this new version of Nexgear Tango is the stirrup. The stirrup has these little, almost like bumpers, they're kind of like brake pads, maybe you might say, that go on the stirrup itself, and they're serviceable in the field. If instead of wearing out the stirrup, it would wear out these little bumpers, and they could just be taken off and replaced. And that way you can maintain the life of that stirrup longer. I think too they also help with some of the quieting of the joint unit. One thing I didn't point out earlier that I'll point out now, in the previous version, there were times when there might be some separation between the stirrup and actually the little stop pin in the reaction modules. Well, as someone's walking, whenever you get metal contacting metal, you're going to get a little bit of a clicking sound. And certainly we had that in the first version of Nexgear Tango. In this version, what they've done is added a little spring and extra stop in there so that the stop of the module itself remains in contact with the stirrup at all times. So there's never that opportunity where we get a separation and then a recontact. So it's helped with the noise level of the joint a great deal. It's really quiet now. I mean, I will admit, the first generation, you could hear some clicking as someone was walking if they were getting so much range that they were pulling that stop away from the stirrup and then coming back and contacting that stirrup. But now that the stirrup is remaining in contact at all times, that clicking noise has gone away. We also have a little assembly tool. I'll say that those pieces on the stirrup, they can be replaced without this assembly tool. But the assembly tool just makes it so much easier. Just like with most any job, if you've got the right tool for the job's typically going to be a little easier. You can certainly replace those, no problem. The assembly tool just makes it a whole lot easier to do. One of the other things that's different, certainly about this next generation here of Nexgear Tango, we've got some different lamination dummies. They're very similar looking to the previous dummies, but there are lamination dummies specific to this new joint. Because the joint is a little bit different, it's not really retrofittable to the old joints. So you would need new lamination dummies. If you're going to self-fab these, you would need new lamination dummies. And then there's a shaping dummy as well, which we didn't have before. So this would be very helpful because that the reaction in the Ultra module, they do stick up so much higher than the joint body itself. You kind of need to know how that's going to lay on the model, on your patient's leg. If you don't have that, you might contour your uprights in a way that look good for just the joint body itself. But then when you go and attach the Ultra module on there, because it does raise that profile so much, you might find it maybe hitting your patient's leg. So now we have a shaping dummy that you can attach to it, so that while you're contouring your uprights, you'll know exactly how much clearance you need to have. So as you're contouring, you know you'll keep that away from their leg, so you wouldn't have that issue once you get to the definitive fitting. There are no more specialized tools. That was one of the feedback that we're getting from the field. So we listened. There is no special mounting adapter anymore. It's just going to be standard, Torx wrench, Allen keys, and metric sockets. Anything you could get at any hardware store, you can easily obtain to be able to fit one of these. I'll say in that fit kit, you'll already have all the tools that you need there. So you wouldn't have to, if you didn't have the right size Torx wrench or the right size, sockets, that would already be in your fit kit. So you would have that already available to you. But because there is no specialized tools anymore, that should make it a little easier for people. There's still, definitely a process to the first time when you assemble these things, but after the fact, making any kind of adjustments is pretty easy. But the assembly does require, a little bit of work on the front end. When we're talking about fabrication and fitting, so this is because of the power of those springs, we've got to have a pretty rigid structure that it's connected to. So it really needs to be some sort of carbon structure, a carbon frame AFO or KFO. So if we're making it out in Salt Lake City, it's going to be pre-preg carbon fiber. If you're making it in your own lab, you could certainly do it with just a wet lam. But we do need that to be made with a carbon fiber structure. If it were just a thermoplastic, we'd probably see that thermoplastic start to deform before you ever were able to even engage the spring. So they wouldn't be getting the benefit of the joint itself if we're trying to fabricate this with just typical, like, polypro or something. So it really needs to be a more rigid structure made out of carbon to really get what we need to get out of this particular joint. This is a quick little video. I'm just going to kind of talk you through a little bit in terms of what you would do. So, and this is something probably a little different than you would do with a typical AFO. We're going to go through a static alignment stage before we go through a dynamic alignment. What he's doing there is he's finding that theoretical center of rotation of the knee. And he made a mark 15 millimeters anterior to that center of rotation of the knee. And that's where we're looking to align this orthosis. So if the ground reaction force is falling 15 millimeters anterior to the center of rotation of the knee, there's a little stop screw now that you would put in there once you found your alignment. The previous one didn't have this stop screw, and we were finding that over time it would back out a little bit, so the person's alignment might change. This way, once we lock in their alignment, we know it's going to stay there because we've just put a little stop screw on top of it and we've torqued it down. Now he's taking off the top side of that reaction and ultra module, and you can see there's two little Delrin. Those are spring dummies. So you're going to do your static alignment with those dummies, so you know you've got them in the proper position. And then once you do that, you'll take those dummies out and you'll put the springs in. That gray spring is the spring for the ultra module. And he's going to put the screw cap back on top of that, and he'll put a little pre-tension on that spring. Now that's the spring for the reaction module. And again, the reaction module has two different stiffnesses of spring. One, the blue spring is the firm, the yellow spring is the extra firm. So just depending on what your patient needs, you could put either of those springs in that. I would say this is probably the typical configuration that we would see with an ultra module in the anterior channel and a reaction module in the posterior channel. That's going to give us enough support we need from mid stance to terminal stance in that anterior support with the ultra module, and then enough support at, say, heel strike to prevent that foot slap at initial contact This, you can see this gentleman now, and as you would have them do the same kind of thing. Just walk around your office. If you have a ramp or if you have stairs, that would be good for them to be able to feel that out and experience that as you can kind of tweak their the how much force you want them to be feeling, how much resistance you're giving them to those motions. Some of the resources that we have now for you, that little QR code there will take you to a lot of our resources. We have a selection guide that would help you kind of guide you through what modules we think might be best suited for the weakness of the leg that the patient that you're seeing. If they just have weak plantar flexors, we have weak plantar flexors and dorsiflexors. If there is a little bit of quad weakness, that'll kind of guide you through your initial selection of the modules. But like I say, if you did have that fit kit, you would have all the modules in all the sizes to be able to pick and choose from. So you could really kind of, I don't want to say play with them on your patient, but certainly you have the ability to mix and match and change things out if it's not if everything doesn't look right when you're first walking them. It's just so easy just to take one out and put another one in, and then you know that you've got the right thing for that patient as they leave your office. We also have if you haven't visited it before, on YouTube, we have an Ottobock Professionals YouTube channel. So with this, we can with just about every product we have, I would say there's some sort of video resource for you out there. With Nexgear Tango in particular, there's kind of an animated video that will kind of walk you through the different modules. You can kind of see what they're doing as the person is walking. And there's a couple of other videos that actually walk you through, assembling the both the joint, and I think there's one on assembling the stirrup, replacing those little bumpers on the stirrup. And also, us in professional clinical services certainly use us as a resource. I would say if you've never had any experience with Nexgear Tango, and this is going to be your first time, I would highly recommend you, scheduling some time with us. We can get that test brace out to you, and then we can just kind of walk you through how to assemble these different modules so that when your patient comes in, that's not the first time you're fumbling around with this. You kind of want to get a good general idea of what you're doing before you see that patient that first time. So please give us a call, schedule some time with us, and we'll be glad to kind of walk you through and show you how to put these things together and give you some tips and tricks, on what chambers to use, which modules, and what kind of patient to look for, things like that. But that's some of the resources that we have for you. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, so we'll go ahead and we'll take questions. If you want, you can put them into the Q&A. You do now have the ability to unmute yourselves also if you wish to ask a question that way. While any questions are coming through, Ron, I do have one for you. So if somebody has a patient on the older Nexgear Tango, are they able to just get the Ultra module and put that on there?
That probably wouldn't work so well. It's not really meant to be. It's not made to be retrofittable like that. And certainly because the Ultra module is so much taller than the reaction module, you'd probably end up running into the frame, or just it wasn't initially designed to have a module that tall. So it's really not retrofittable in that way.
All right, thank you. All right, and then kind of go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
So you had mentioned limited range of motion. Is there a specific set amount of range of motion that you would cap it at? Like, is it 5? Is it 10 degrees? What kind of are we looking at in that category?
I mean, I would just say, knowing that, I mean, if they have a limited range already, they're probably going to hit the end of their range before they would start to maybe experience very much out of Nexgear Tango. I mean, I don't know if their range was limited at 10 degrees, say, We know we only use about 10 degrees of dorsiflexion on flat surfaces when we're walking. So if they have weak plantar flexors, but their ankle is limited to 10 degrees of dorsiflexion, we don't want them just kind of slamming into that 10 degrees. So with Nexgear Tango, we'd be able to allow them to experience that 10 degrees in a much more controlled way. But I would say when you get closer to like 5 degrees or less, probably I don't think there's enough motion that's happening in their ankle for them to really be able to get the most, I guess, out of Nexgear Tango. Does
Okay,
that
cool.
answer your
Thank you.
question?
Yes.
What's
Thank
the
you for your
best way
question.
to go about scheduling with you, Ron or Ted or whoever covers our area? I haven't fit one before, but I actually have one in my hand, and would love to schedule some time with you guys first before scheduling the patient.
I mean, if we've worked with you before and everything, and you have our information, you could certainly just reach out to us. But if not, then certainly go through your local, Ottobock territory manager, and then they can, put you in touch with us, and then we'll work on, scheduling whatever time's best for the both of us.
Okay, so don't go on Teams and just schedule an appointment on either of your calendar.
Probably not that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying.
Oh yeah. Any other questions? Do y'all see how different this is from traditional double action ankle joints, and two, how much benefit a patient could get from being able to experience more physiological gait and not have these kind of abrupt stops because we've had to put a pin in there. I'm hoping that I conveyed that the major differences we have here, and how much better off, how much more functional, how much more comfortable ambulation will be for your patients with this ankle joint versus traditional ankle joints.
And Ron, I've got a question in the chat here. Is the forefoot dynamic?
It's still a carbon. The forefoot is a carbon plate, so you will get some deflection and return in the carbon foot plate as well. Yes. But again, the layup for like if we were fabricating it for you, there's an order form where you'll put the person's height and weight, things like that in there, and then the layup for that individual person will be based on those criteria. So someone who certainly weighs 110 pounds isn't going to have as stiff a foot plate as someone who weighs 200 pounds.
Excellent, thank you. And then I see, are there any suggested billing codes?
We do. I didn't go over those, but we do have some suggested billing codes for Nexgear Tango if you're using an AFO for this. I will say we're working, in conjunction with other manufacturers, really to try to get a code that will help you guys to be able to provide or more easily provide these types of devices for your patients. So hopefully I think we put together a really good application. So I'm hoping to hear something, here in the fall. I think we have the public meeting kind of thing here in the fall, so we wouldn't hear really anything until sometime next year. But if that comes through, I think that'll help a lot in terms of giving us another code to be able to build these multifunction ankle joints, because there's just when I was researching for our code application, there's been no change in coding since like back in the early 80s for orthotic ankle joints. So and time again, I'll get on my soapbox here a little bit. If prosthetics comes out with something new and fancy, they're quick to throw a code out there. But if orthotics is still living with codes from the 80s, so we're trying to kind of, and we think there are some people on the committee that things have kind of changed there, that they're more open and understanding that as technological advancements are made, the coding needs to keep up with those advancements so we can continue to provide those items to patients. It's for the betterment of the patient. So hopefully that code will come out and you'll get a better reimbursement, which will allow you to actually use these types of multifunction ankle joints on more of your patients.
Excellent. And then we had a hand up from Kurt.
Hey, Ron, is this approved for use with the C-brace?
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, so it's just like the other. And the other, I could never figure out for the life of me, what's the benefit of using a posterior reaction module? I just I can't figure out when it would be useful.
If I would say if the spring alone, if they've got such extreme dorsiflexor weakness that they're getting such very extreme like foot slap at initial contact, and the spring alone maybe isn't enough to control that, I've seen a reaction module do a much better job. Also, I would say someone that has some recurvatum, maybe we don't want to put a true stop back there. Certainly with this ultra module, I think it is so strong that it'll really help to control that without having to do a true stop back there.
Perfect. That's a good idea. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks. And then I've got another one in the chat here. Does the system allow for adjustable stop like the Neuro Swing?
It does. So that's what you're doing in that static alignment. You're adjusting that initial stop, and then during your dynamic alignment, you're adjusting, how much compression you're putting on the springs. And if at any point you needed to change that initial alignment again, you can. There's a wrench that it goes down through everything to adjust that alignment. So that's where kind of the alignment of the ankle is adjustable independent of the compression we're putting on those springs.
Excellent. All right. Well, they got one more question. Go ahead, Fred.
You might be on mute.
Yep.
They might be clapping.
All right, so we'll wait on Fred there for a second. I've got one more question in the chat here. What's the advantages compared with other spring joints like NeuroSwing that we use at our clinics as a standard joint for the stroke patient group with the classic knee hyperextension when a prefab AFO is not enough?
I would say both the NeuroSwing 2, the triple action, and the Nexgear Tango, those are three that are in that category of multifunction ankle joints. And I think they all, act very similarly and do very similar things for your patient. I think now with this addition of the ultra module, I really think that our extra firm spring might have been stronger than the other springs in the other joints already. But now with the addition of this ultra module, I know we're able to produce more force than anything else out there, I believe. So depending on the needs of your patient, if they felt like they were ever, bottoming out a spring, or they were doing anything where you felt if I just could give them a little more support, I don't want to stop that motion, but this spring just isn't enough. That ultra module is definitely gonna be the trick there.
All right, excellent. And then another one on the stop here is the stop adjustment easy for a patient to adjust for various shoe heel heights without affecting the resistance?
I would probably not. I would probably not give that adjustment to the patient. I think that's something that an orthotist needs to do, because we want to make sure that thing is always aligned properly. Could they do it? Yes. I don't know if I would, just like with a prosthesis, I'm always hesitant to hand my patient the wrench and ask them to start aligning their own prosthesis. So I don't know that I would want to have someone trying to align their own orthosis all the time. But could it be done? Yes. Is it easy? Sorta. Would I want them to do it? Probably not. I probably want them to come back into you I would say if they change shoe heights a lot, I would probably use like a heel wedge or something. I would set them up at their highest heel height, and then when they need to go into those lower heel shoes, they'll put a little heel wedge in their shoe.
All right, excellent. And then we have another one here. This one, so what is the ballpark pricing for the system fabricated by Ottobock? That one, Jason, I'll say reach out to your territory manager, and they'll be able to help you out with any of that pricing. And then Ron, you might have a good idea on this. Second one here is what is the turnaround time for fabrication?
I think currently we're looking at in-house. I think it's like 10 to 15 days or so. We do, because it is a finished carbon orthosis. So we do recommend having like a test orthosis. I don't know if it's just a recommendation. It might actually be a requirement. So much like C-brace, you would take a cast and you would send it to us, and we would fabricate a test orthosis for you then to fit. And with that, you can check you could check the alignment certainly, but certainly the fit of it. Because if we've got it's a carbon orthosis that can't there's not much adjustment that can be made to those shells after the fact. So we want to know that we're not getting navicular pressure or any kind of pressure on the tibial crest or things like that. So I would highly recommend, I do think it's required with this orthosis though, to do a test orthosis, and then that would be sent back, and then a finished orthosis back to you. And we're probably talking like 10 to 15 days maybe in between both of those. So it's going to be a little more lead time than you just casting somebody for something and fitting them the next week, if you go through us. But you have that option to self-fab it, in your own office, and then you control the fab time completely.
Excellent. And then yet another one here. With knowing that we recommend pre-preg or wet lam, would pro comp be an option for fabrication?
I don't know if that would be enough. I have not, and I don't know that we have tested this particular joint on orthosis made with that. So I can't give you a definitive answer on that. I'm sorry. I know our recommendation is to use to fabricate a full carbon AFO.
And then for fabrication, do we accept 3D scans instead of casts?
Currently, we do not. I apologize for that, but we do not accept the 3D scans yet. That is a goal of ours, but at this point, we need an actual cast of your patient.
Excellent questions here, everybody. So while any other questions might be coming in the chat, or if anybody thinks of anything, I'm going to move it on to our last slide here, so we don't forget about it or we'll run out of any time. So on the screen now is the QR code for the quiz. So if you can break out your phone, scan the QR code, that'll take you directly to the quiz. Highly recommend to take the quiz sooner rather than later, so you have all this excellent information in your head still, nice and fresh. But if you do think of any questions after this session, please feel free to reach out to Ron or the education team at Ottobock with the emails on the screen currently. A few other little things to follow up on. In about a week, we'll have this session posted onto our My Learning platform. So if you do want to go back and review it, you'll be able to go on there and check it out, and you'll be able to see it. There will be an email that comes out from the education team, just as a thank you and a reminder, with also the link to the quiz as well. And then I got one more question in the chat before we're going. So is casting done via weight bearing or non-weight bearing?
I would probably recommend at least like a semi-weight bearing type of cast, so that we know we're getting kind of an accurate picture of their foot, under some kind of pressure at least. It probably depends too how much correction that person can tolerate. Certainly, we can get a lot more correction in a non-weight bearing cast, but if someone can't tolerate that kind of correction, we don't want to make a definitive orthosis with that amount of correction built into it. So I would say at least a semi-weight bearing cast, so that we can kind of simulate and if that navicular becomes more present or more prominent under weight bearing, we want to know that in your cast, certainly. So I would probably suggest at least a semi-weight bearing cast.
Excellent. This one we might have to check into. Is fabrication and joints available in Canada?
I will have to check on that if this is released in Canada yet.
Yep, I'll grab it.
Actually, I'll just chime in on that one. It is.
Thank you. Thank you, Lacey.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, well, I'm not seeing anything else coming across just this minute. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you so much for all the wonderful questions and the interaction at the end here. Hopefully you take a few little nuggets away from Ron, and hopefully you join us next time for our next Experts on Demand. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you.